Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the presentation. The topic is on self-esteem, social and affective outcomes of students with special education needs and in higher education. I'm Dr. Anna Ng, and then we have this whole research team conducting SEN research. Inclusive education is defined as all students, regardless of special educational needs or disabilities, are allowed to receive education in regular schools or classrooms. And in previous studies, the main focus is on primary and secondary schools. The result is mixed. Generally, it is found that there's ineffective in promoting academic performance, self-concept, social relationship, or well-being. And then we find that recent years, there are more and more students of SEN in higher education. In 2017 in Hong Kong, there are around 800 students of SEN. And then in 2020, there are more than 1,000 students with SEN. So the increase in 5 years is 46.2%. And also for students with SEN, in these 5 years, we find that around 12.7% to 17.5% students of SEN is accepted by our local public funded universities. And more than 80% of students of SEN are enrolled in private self-financing institutions of higher education. Objectives of this study is to compare students with and without SEN in higher education, in global self-esteem, social relationship, and psychological distress. The questionnaire we adopt includes 3 sections. Section 1 is introduction and invitation, and section 2 is the demographic characteristics, and section 3 is measuring instruments. There are 3 measurement instruments we adopt. First one is global self-esteem scale, and second is social relationship scale, and third is psychological distress scale. Data collection. We adopt online questionnaire survey. Participation is voluntary and anonymous, and there are 10 days for respondents to complete the questionnaire, and after 2 weeks, we send reminder and ask them to complete again. Participants. We collect 91 students with SEN and 458 students without SEN. Results. We find that there's no significant difference in the social relationship, and students with SEN is lower in self-esteem and higher in psychological distress. As we can see, we find that SEN students of SEN is demonstrating lower in global self-esteem, and then we can find that the SEN score is at the midpoint of self-esteem. So they are not actually very poor in the self-esteem, but they just maybe in lack of positive evaluation of themselves. And then non-SEN students or students of general students without SEN, and their self-evaluation is more positive, and probably they have this positive illusion about themselves, and then illusion may be negative, but then they are possibly having certain kind of illusion. That means they may evaluate themselves higher in the self-evaluation. With this kind of self-evaluation, they are capable of showing care for others, or they feel content, and they might also be more productive or creative. As you can see from this table, the SEN, students with SEN, so the midpoint, the mean of their score in global self-esteem is 17.82, and then the midpoint is 17.5. So they are not really low in self-esteem, right? But then non-SEN, they score higher. And for psychological distress of SEN and non-SEN, SEN and non-SEN, the population, you can see that both groups of students experience academic distress or academic stress. So they both find distress. And SEN shows greater distress because probably they are in lack of empowerment or skill to communicate needs and to integrate into higher education. This is a table showing their score in psychological distress. As you can see, SEN, they score higher than the midpoint of distress scale, and non-SEN also higher than midpoint, but SEN students score higher. So students with SEN, they experience greater distress because they are in lack of empowerment or lack of communication skills. They don't know how to integrate into higher education. And also they might experience others' negative attitude towards SEN as well. And we further analyze the data, which try to differentiate, group them into different types of SEN. So there are 3 types of SEN. First one is the physical and sensory impairment, learning development disability, the second type. And then, more than half of the sample or the respondents is of this type 2. For type 3, they are the mental and emotional problem type. So what are the findings then? So the result shows for type 1 students, their self-esteem is greater than non-SEN. And for type 1, their distress level is lower than SEN. So this is the finding very, a surprise for us. That means for students with, so you remember, I go back to the last slide, you can see type 1 is physical and sensory impairment. So these students are actually demonstrating higher self-esteem as well as lower distress level than those non-SEN. So I think this is telling us that even though they are having physical problem, but then they are tougher, and then they also evaluate themselves higher. So this is a very interesting finding for this study. And conclusion, students with SEN maintain group social relationship, but lower in global self-esteem and higher in psychological distress. And also, for type 2, those with mental and emotional problem, they are lowest in the self-esteem and highest in distress level. For type 1, physical and sensory disabilities, they are well adjusted. The self-esteem and distress scores are not different from non-SEN. So this is our findings. Thank you.